The American dream is often thought of as working our way from the bottom to the top. But what is often overlooked is that the most challenging bottom to work our way from is not always our financial position, but the state of our mental and emotional being.
I had a very interesting childhood. I grew up in a very poor area of town. My mom and I were living with this family because we didn't have any money. And so we were living in the ghetto area of town, and we were basically the only white faces you saw for 8 square miles. What was interesting growing up there is I learned that it's not our color, it's not our sexual orientation that makes us different. It's who we are inside, where we can choose to be the greatness of us. We can choose to be unkind. We actually have choice. It doesn't matter all of the other conditions that everybody else says. Growing up, I experienced a lot of abuse. I experienced physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse. And yet, even in the middle of it, I remember thinking to myself, it doesn't have to be this way. As you might imagine, experiencing that, it created certain points of view, certain limitations in my life, but I always still had a sense of hope.
Hope is a feeling that helps us persist through our most difficult times. But while hope may have been the force that kept Dane motivated through his childhood, as an adult, it would become the thing that he struggled with the most.
I was 30 years old, where I had what everybody from the outside looked at my life and told me how perfect it was. I was starting my second chiropractic practice, and I became a chiropractor because I wanted to create miracles in people's lives. I had the girlfriend, I was living in Santa Barbara, this beautiful paradise, and I was dying inside, and I'd been unhappy for the better part of 3 years. And finally, I just had had enough. And for the first time in my 30 years on the planet, I had given up hope of creating the future that I always thought was possible and I always knew was possible. And it was at that point that I set a date to end my life 6 months in the future.
Prepared to go to an unconscionable extreme. Ironically, it was the tentative end of Dane's life that he would discover a brand new beginning.
You know, when I was a little kid, I remember my grandmother asked me at one point, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I was like, "Happy." And she said, "No, do you want to be a doctor? Do you want to be a lawyer? Do you want to be a garbage man? What do you want to be?" And I said, "Happy," because I didn't care what that was going to look like. I just wanted to be happy. And it was at that point in my life at 30 years old where I went, wow, this is never going to happen. Okay, then I don't want to be here anymore. I set a date to end my life 6 months in the future. And then I came across something called Access Consciousness. I came across it because I saw this tiny little ad in the paper that said, "Access, all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory." And as you can imagine, I was overjoyed. No, I was not overjoyed at all. I hated the person who put the ad in the paper because my life was pain, suffering, and gory at the time. But I learned long before that, if you love something or you hate it, there's something there for you.
Dane's hate giving way to curiosity and figuring that he had nothing left to lose. He made a decision that not only changed his life, but literally saved it.
So I called, and I ended up having a session of something called Access Consciousness bars. It's this wonderful thing where somebody will put their hands on your head really lightly for about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. It reduces anxiety, stress, and depression, an average of 87% with one session. I walked into the session depressed and suicidal with a plan and a date to end my life. I walked out of it an hour and 15 minutes later with a sense of peace and joy and a gratitude for being alive. I'll never forget after that session looking up at the sky and thinking, has it always been this beautiful here? If it feels like this to be alive, I'm in. I started receiving these sessions weekly, and within a couple of months, I met the founder. He came into my chiropractic office for a chiropractic session, and we became fast friends. It's one of those people that you see them and you're just friends instantly. Well, we started talking back and forth, and we started finding that there were ways of changing things that nobody else had yet discovered. And this became the journey that we went on. And so within a few months, I started working for Access Consciousness. And at the point when I started, we were in the United States, Australia, and New Zealand. And we had 2 facilitators. Now we're in 176 countries. We have almost 13,000 facilitators of different levels of the work. And it's, over the last 20 years, it's been a labor of love.
And it is the desire of Access Consciousness to empower people to know what they know and inspire them to realize that they can change anything in their life with ease.
We have freely available thousands upon thousands of hours of material that people can have, tools that they can use in the trenches of life to change things. And I get hundreds of emails a month from people saying, thank you so much for the tools you're providing. And the most amazing gift is to see that this works for other people too. It would be one thing if I used these tools and they worked for me, but they didn't for anybody else. But I've worked with hundreds of thousands of people, and they work with them too.
Indeed, it is companies like Access Consciousness that reminds us that success is not about the hard work we put into this world, but the hard work we put in to build ourselves and others.